Welcome to 10 Frames Per Second, podcast about photojournalism by photojournalists, but for everyone. With your hosts, Joe Giordano and Molly Roberts. New episodes drop every Tuesday on 10fps.net or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also catch back episodes on WLOI.org, as all episodes are recorded and produced at WLOI Loyola Radio in Maryland.
Welcome back to 10 Frames Per Second. I'm Joe Giordano, and this is my co-host,
Molly Roberts.
there you go,
Okay.
of Smithsonian and National Geographic editor.
Thank you. Today we're excited to have Svetlana Bachevanova with us online. Svetlana began her career as a photojournalist and is now also the publisher at FotoEvidence, a publishing house and activist organization that supports documentary photography focused on human rights and social justice. Svetlana worked in Bulgaria for the newspaper Democracia during the time of the country's transition from dictatorship to democracy. Bulgaria has been a parliamentary democracy since 1990. As publisher for FotoEvidence, which she's done since 2010, she has been the driving force behind many of the books there, including Ukraine, a War Crime, and Ukraine, Love and War. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Maury.
Svetlana, we always learn something interesting when people tell their origin stories. Can you tell us how you got started in photojournalism?
Back then in Bulgaria, I was born in Bulgaria, when we received the first signs for changes approaching in 1989. A group of intellectuals that were actually an underground organization promoting and working for democracy change in Bulgaria, decided to start a newspaper. It was a very brave idea because without media, you know, it doesn't matter what you do if it's not in the newspapers. And at that time, all the media in Bulgaria was purely communistic. So they decided to start this newspaper, Democracia, and somehow they invited me to work there. And that was my first photojournalistic job. I basically, almost not from school, but I had few other different jobs, and that was the first thing I had to do, just cover the transition of the country. So it was incredibly exciting. We slept in the in the space of the newspaper.
Wow.
Because things were happening all the time, all night, and we were young and we wanted to cover everything. So it was a great experience. And at that time, the changes in the Soviet Union started and Romania. So I was former Yugoslavia. I was able to cover these events there. And then I moved to the United States. And I started FotoEvidence because it became clear for me during my work in the newspaper that documenting what you witness is extremely important. Documenting and classifying, archiving, organizing. It's just the smart thing to do for the future.
Right.
And when we work in the newspaper and we created articles for different events that happened during the communist regime, there were never visual materials because people were afraid to photograph. And if somebody did, this evidence were destroyed. So it was more clear that needs to be done. So when I arrived in the United States with so many opportunities, I decided to just make this dream come true. I started FotoEvidence.
And how, during your formative years, how tightly controlled was the photography culture in Bulgaria? I'm asking because I collect Czech photography books, and it seems like later, kind of after '68, kind of blew over. They kind of loosened the censorship on photography, and that allowed like Kudelka to do the gypsies and which we don't use that word anymore, but that's the title of the book, and Exile, and you know, other photographers like him to kind of move around more and do more editorial type photography. But in your country, in Bulgaria, was it very tightly controlled?
It was different. Bulgaria is not
Right,
Czechoslovakia
right,
for
right, right,
sure.
right, right.
So it was like that. You can't actually do true documentary. You can't photograph things that are obviously not well presented, or depict poverty or depict social injustice. You can't do this. So many of my colleagues, including me, we turned into what at that time was more prominent art photography. So it was all this metaphoric way of saying what you see, but never direct. So that was a big difference. So we don't have Kudelka.
Hmm. And that was under Zvikov. Was he the last?
Zhivkov, Todor Zhivkov was the last 45 years
Yeah.
in power.
And was the changeover in Bulgaria, was it more of an uprising, or was it more of a peaceful transfer of power, like peaceful-ish, like some of the other countries once, like 89, 90?
Yeah, I think it was peaceful. Bulgaria is very aligned with the Soviet Union,
Mhm.
and these changes have been always very difficult. So one of the things that happened and when 89 came, it just came of as a result of the fact that the communist politicians at that time were smart enough to understand that if they don't change the course, they're gone. So for one night, they became from Communist Party, Socialist Party,
Oh,
and they became the socialist. So Bulgaria, in fact, never changed. These people are still alive, and they still are in the list for every election, and they have big support in Bulgaria. So changes are still developing
Hmm.
so very slow. It's incredibly slow.
very slow.
So, what are some of your favorite books that you've published? So, you've been doing this now for 15 years, and I know you have a huge catalog of work. I'm, of course, interested in talking about the Ukraine books, but what are some of your other favorite books that you've published?
One of my favorite books that I love them all because every one of them is incredible experience working with the photographer or with group of photographers and developing every detail because we pay attention to what font we use, why the font is produced. Every single small thing we pay attention is great experience. But I love the book Occupied Pleasures by Tanya Habjuka about Palestine, how the Palestinian live and play and have joy under Israeli occupation. It's one of the books that I like. And another book is actually I can't really do this because everyone is dear. But yes, Ukrainian war crime is definitely on my heart.
Yeah, that was such a huge undertaking. I mean, 90 photographers, right? It's like 250 pages of photography and the use of a lot of little grids, which I thought was really interesting in the design. I'm sure there are even, I couldn't count them all, but there are a lot of images in that book, right?
What was,
440 images.
How many?
wow.
440 images.
That's a lot.
And what was the because I mean you're pulling from all these different photographers. Can you talk a little bit about what the editing process was like?
The editing process was we jumped into the idea of documenting the war crimes in Ukraine without knowing the full scale of what is coming in our direction. So as soon as we opened the call to all photographers, we received more than 7,000 images.
Wow.
And Sarah Lynn, who is the editor of this book, went, and me, of course, around her. We went to these images probably maybe 100 times because it's very hard to select what to be. Meanwhile, the war is developing, so we receive new and new and new. So before we go to press, we put the last images from things that happened just a few days before we went to press. It was very difficult, very exciting, and very rewarding at the end because we have this incredible documentation of war crimes. We have separately the testimony of each photographer who witnessed the crime and photographed the crime. So it's like another layer of testimony. And then we were able, the first year, to present, exhibit, and the book in more than 19 different venues around. In some of them, governments also sent prime minister or minister of foreign affairs or diplomats also came. And that was very important because we were able to distribute this book in the right hands.
I'm really also very impressed by the fact that all of your books are available online to page through. And I think that's a really cool service that you do, and, speaks to the mission that you have of social justice and making sure that information is in the hands of all people, whether they can afford the books or not. So
Actually, the books are not. People receive the books when they make a donation to FotoEvidence, and those money go immediately towards the next book that we produce.
right. Yes. And so I guess the original call for the Ukraine war crime also spawned the next book, Ukraine, Love and War. Did that all come in one call?
No, the next year, while working on the first book, we were often hear the question, so now what? You publish this book and that's it. And I kind of start feeling guilty. I can't really stop this. So we decided to create another book that will cover the consequences of the invasion on children, soldiers returning home, women. So that's how we made another open call to the same photographers. I mean, basically broadly, but big part of the book are the same photographers. And this time more Ukrainian photographers responded because they were able to photograph in this simple way the daily life, which is war. And this is how, in kind of very intimate stories to tell about what are the consequences on families. That was pretty much the same experience.
I was curious about, some of the grids that you put together, like instead of having to choose the most compelling image or two of, families saying goodbye at the train station, you had that grid of so many images. It was just, it had a lot of power to do that. It's sort of an interesting approach, and I think it really worked. And then the other grid I noticed it was really powerful was the one that with the sort of numbers on it, written about, that women and children or that humans occupy this space. And it really reminded me of the images from Katrina and New Orleans, when it's so interesting how in situations of disaster, catastrophe, war, there are a lot of aspects that are repetitive in a way, but that
Yes.
the cumulative quality of it builds the power too. It's a really affecting book. And so, of course, I wanted to talk about it. I thought that I don't know, was the guy who wrote the intro, Volodymyr
Demchenko.
What a great intro there. And I also thought that it had, such power for these days here in America, because he says that history is written by the winners. But, now when there's so much visual documentation, the winners, if they want to rewrite history, they don't have such an easy job of it because this is all evidence. This is all documentation. You can't just say, oh, no, for instance, like here in the U.S., oh, no, January 6th was just sort of friendly visitors coming to the Capitol. You can't say that when you have the evidence, of photography, video, interviews, and first-person reporting. And so I love that intro because it just has a broad meaning to the world, not just to Ukraine.
And also he reminds us with, and then in the second intro in the Love and War book, Miroslav Lajok also describes how during the time when all the journalists left Mariupol during the occupation of Mariupol, and only Evgeny Maloletka and Mstislav Chernov left. And they were able to photograph the bombing of the maternity hall in Mariupol and that famous image of the pregnant woman that is taken out. That kind of it was one of the first images that we saw from the war in March
Right.
22. At the same time, the same day, 30 kilometers from there, Russians bomb a building and there are 57 people dead and no photographer. There is no evidence of this. So it's like it doesn't exist.
Even with all of the photographers who are around, you can't be everywhere, and that's
I know, but this case is very clear because there were no photographers in the area.
so the contrast between that, yeah, what you can prove and what you can talk about, what stays around as evidence, that really makes
And how is important, yeah.
a huge difference.
What is the response in Ukraine been to the books? Do you talk to people who have seen them who aren't photographers, who live there, anyone in the government that's, keeps them on hand to show people?
I traveled to Ukraine last year in November, and we presented the book with participation of many of the Ukrainian photographers in the Pinchuk Center in Kiev. And at that time, we were able to give the book to the foreign minister, to the president, to the chief prosecutor, and then there is delegation with Kerry Kennedy, who also brought the book to several other law institutions in Ukraine, the first book about the war crimes. We hear everybody liked the book. President Zelensky said, "You did a good job." That's it.
Wonderful. Well, the tragedy is that the war continues. And now with this political change in Washington, D.C., I'm sure you are, and a lot of people are concerned about, Ukraine's ability to defend itself.
I am concerned. At the same time, I think that Ukraine and Europe needs to find a way to defend themselves without the United States and not be in that position, in my opinion. Because for 2 years, they weren't able to build even one factory to produce ammunition or something that will fit the front line inside, the soldiers on the front line. So I think the society there is kind of post-Soviet.
Mm-hmm.
Many things are not how we imagine they are. So it makes difference.
So post-Soviet, do you mean it's a little passive?
It just is bounded with so much unnecessary, complicated things that you need to do to accomplish a simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
The attitudes are also post-Soviet. There is not that dedication to work to. It's a different society.
Well, their survival is dependent upon that being shaken.
It's extremely difficult for them now, extremely difficult. And even what happened, they continue working and producing. And what I decided to do was, after we finished with the second book, is related to what we are talking about Ukraine, is that I created an initiative that receives sponsorship from the Open Society Foundations, and we extended FotoEvidence in Ukraine. It's called FotoEvidence Ukraine. So with this initiative, we will be able to publish in the next 3 years only books from Ukrainian photographers.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a whole team in Ukraine. I have an editor and a designer, and everybody is Ukrainian. And we are producing our first book. And it's an extremely interesting educational process for both sides.
Right.
And much more difficult than the first book, because I don't know where the people are. I mean, we have 30 photographers participating in the book, and half of them are on the front line. You never know when they're going to be, how they're going to react on it. It's complicated. So, but in the same time, I believe that after this initiative finish, it will be established a kind of very cool group of people that know how to build books, know how to edit, know how to archive their work and preserve it. And all these books we are donating to libraries in Ukraine.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. So it's sort of a teaching situation as well as a creating.
Yes, yes, I think that's very important.
And essentially a mentorship aspect to it, right?
Yeah. So Sarah worked with an editor, Ukrainian editor, on the first book that we're publishing. And then it would be another editor on their side that would work with her, and another, and it will be educational.
That's great. That's really important to have the people be able to, tell their own story and
They could continue, yeah.
know all the pieces of putting it together to have it distributed and stuff like that. Sounds amazing.
Just talking about the publishing model for a second, just to switch gears a little bit. What are the procedures for someone that's, that wants to pitch to, appropriate, of course, appropriate material to FotoEvidence, and, how long, what's the process for publishing a book with you guys?
We have twice a year grants that we give to photographers for publishing a book. One is the FotoEvidence Book Award that is now biannual because we published the two Ukrainian book, and the second one is the FotoEvidence Women Award, the W Award. So this year, the W Award will be highlighting work addressing the alarming rise of right-wing populism across the globe. So we would accept projects from identifying as women, photographers related to that topic. This is one of the ways. Then once a year we have an open doors. This is a place when we meet with somebody that want to produce a book for 1 hour, and you talk about everything, what needs to be done, the whole process. And then with some of them we continue to work and publish their book. With others we don't. And of course, my email is always open for any proposals.
So is the W Award a new award? I saw something about it and I thought...
It's not a new, it's the third year of this award. Oh. But there was 2-year distance between the second and the fourth, today. We just decided that this is a situation that we have to act, and this is, I think women are in a big threat from what is happening. So we have to give space for that voices.
So those projects are coming in at this time?
At this time, yeah. Deadline is March 25th.
Oh, good. So maybe our show will motivate some people to...
Yeah, we'll put a link to the contest in the show notes, and I'll definitely put the word out.
Thank you.
Yes, I will let the women at Women Photojournalists of Washington know that too, because that... But you say that is focused on how...
The rise of right-wing populism across the globe, threatening to roll back hard-won progress for women, LGBTQI, and other marginalized community. Because this movement often pushed traditional gender roles, oppose reproductive rights, resist equal pay, and challenges self-expression, undermining the fight for equality and inclusion.
Yes, it's so right on. My God, look at the news today.
I know
about in the USA about people sort of being marched out of the military.
Incredible.
It's even,
and we did this. We voted for this.
Even with expecting changes, it seems like above and beyond what we sort of thought would happen. It's so outrageous.
Look, when you have election, it's very simple. People like what a candidate does, and they vote for him. So we have Trump because a big part of the population likes him and like his agenda. Simple as that.
Yeah. And did not want a black woman president.
Yes, that's also.
Black woman president,
Yeah.
I think was, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know that more people did either vote against him or vote for no one, which is the really sad part. About 36% of American voters voted for no one. And that's sort of why we're in the situation that we're in.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And it's that kind of apathy that is a little bit hard to.
But you know what? I thought about, we were very sad here. And I thought about, and I said, actually, nothing is changing. My life continued the way it is. I would continue to do the same thing that I did before with the same goal. And this should be valid for everyone. Resistance is the only way. Resistance, education, and we're just continuing.
Yes, we have to continue, but it's discouraging.
You see that,
It's
you
going to
see,
definitely, mean that there'll be some incredible things to photograph, to uncover, to write stories about, and people who end up getting active, that those will also lead to some powerful stories. But
who's going to publish them if they're all kowtowing to Trump?
yeah, that is a problem. I mean, did you say, Svetlana, that you started FotoEvidence in the United States?
yes.
And then you left and now you're living in France.
I started in 2010. I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I was there until 2016. I voted against President Trump and left the country.
Hmm. Yeah,
I returned back to Europe, and now I just travel back and forward
right.
when it's necessary.
So you still come to the US
Oh,
occasionally.
yeah. I was at the ICP Book Fair. We
Mhm.
had show at the Bronx Documentary Center last year. Yeah.
Well, tell us about some of the other books that are in the that are coming up. Is there anything that's sort of on the horizon that our listeners would like to know about?
The only book we work now is the book from the FotoEvidence Ukraine initiative with the members of the Ukrainian Association of Professional Photographers. It's called War Chronicles, and it started from 2014 until today. It's interesting. It's very, very different. That I actually, for the first time, I saw the difference between photography that is done by a person sent on assignment, even if the assignment is 5 months, you're there, and somebody that lives there and photograph just not events, but just what every day he faces and people he meet. So it's a very interesting in terms of photography. It's kind of unseen related to the war
Yeah,
in Ukraine photography. And it's very, very kind of private and sad.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like it could be very intimate. Those are the kinds of things that are hard to conjure when you're a stranger coming into someone's home or someone from another country, but when it's the images are made by people who live there, then it would hopefully be more intimate. And
I think it is. We're ready with that. It now is under design. And hopefully we'll be able to print in March and be ready for the exhibit of the work and presenting the book in the Kiev Arsenal in May. So we are.
Will you be doing any more? And this is talking about the Degati book, Eyewitness. I just got his biography, like the regular biography from Ursula Janssen. Are there any classical photographers that you would want to work with, or that is coming up, maybe that were underrepresented in the field? Is there a wish list? Is there someone you would really like to call attention to?
No.
I think I mean, it seems to me that you're more driven by issues than you are by photographers.
And the choices we made in photo evidence, who is the photographer doesn't play a big role. It's about the work. And then we also select the photographers that are willing to continue with us the activist part of the work, because not everyone is on this mood. So yeah, no, I don't have this list.
Was it because
Maybe, I mean, I would like to publish more books like Manucher's with biography or autobiography with photographs. I would like to preserve in books the work of that generation.
right? That's what made me ask. I was curious because, I mean, as Iranian photographers go, right? There's only a few that you know off the top of your head. I thought that was great that you had his book Eyewitness published and call attention to that important work that he was doing.
I remember, way back before the pandemic, there was work being done on an American U.S. and Mexican border. And of course, that situation is not going to be getting any better these days. Any thoughts about going back to that topic?
No, I don't think so. That work was initiated by James Delano, and he had this extensive documentation on the border. He also gathered a group of photographers that work, but it's everything that we collect since we start working still seems not enough comparing with what is happening every day.
Yeah.
So we kind of cannot find the right pace for that book. And I think we kind of abandoned the idea for now.
Yeah. Well,
But
also
you
during
never know. You
which
never
makes
know.
it hard to do it. But that's one topic that I'm keeping my eye on because I'm now it's going to be obviously reopened as a real sort of humanitarian disaster once again, and now that there's access again, and so that's a topic that I'm sort of interested in. But I wonder what are some of the topics flying around the world that you have your eyes on in terms of humanitarian disasters.
I spent a lot of time, well, actually the last 3 years, focusing on Ukraine. And maybe it wasn't the right thing to be just there, but it required my attention. So I didn't explore other options. I was asked many times, do we want to publish something about the genocide in Gaza?
Right.
But this is still something that I consider, but we are in the process of selecting the concept of the book. Because it's not something like in Ukraine. We did it right away when the war was still going on. It will be a little bit after. But we have interesting ideas, and
Keeping them under wraps for now.
yes, yes.
I think that what FotoEvidence does, it doesn't seem any other publisher in the world does it. So we wanted to sort of shed a light on the work that you do.
It's incredible. I mean, the books are incredible. I mean, I'm friends, and Molly, you're with Svet Jacqueline,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I bought I have a signed copy of both. So
The
just the
war
work,
crime
yeah,
book.
yeah, and just the work. It's just incredible. We really encourage our listeners to check these books out because, I mean, there's probably some of the most important photo books being produced today. Right, we're in like a golden age of anybody can really do a photo book, even with a well-known publisher if you have a Kickstarter. But these are ones that I hope don't fall through, like not to be forgotten. I think in years to come, people will look at these two, at least the Ukraine books, is really
I think so.
monumental pieces.
It's really a compendium of a tragic world in a way. I mean, there's so many sad things going on, and thank God they're being documented. Like as your journalist soldier wrote in the beginning, so that people can't forget this, and that maybe if it's possible, though it doesn't seem really possible at the moment, or it's I'm concerned, that information can sort of change people's minds, and or make them acknowledge mistakes. So thank you so much for the great work that
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks for being on. This is great. This is really good.
Thanks
Yeah.
for coming
I
on,
mean,
sharing your perspective with us.
what we say about photography, because very often people ask us, what do you believe your work will accomplish? And I also always think that photography cannot change the world, but could activate people, could inspire people to act.
Yes.
And this is what is behind photo evidence. It's not just the issue, are the roots of the issue, the consequences of the issue. So you read, you learn, you educate, you may change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's the idea. Thank you for inviting me. And
It changes conversations to have that information.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you. We have to have this is an anecdote that neither one of you know. Thank you for publishing Smita Sharma's work. She was one of our first guests on the podcast 7 years ago.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She couldn't get anything published anywhere. If you go back and listen to her interview with Elena and I, Volkova, she was our first co-host. She was very frustrated with not being able to get anything published or getting any grants or anything, being a woman.
You're getting
from
any
India.
traction for telling that story.
Exactly, but now
Yeah.
she is. We have to have her back on, actually.
Yeah, let's have her back on. Now she has a TED
Well,
Talk
She
thing.
did,
And
like,
I mean,
watch this.
right now I'm working with a young photographer. She's a Pulitzer Prize from India, Sana Matu.
okay.
Sana Matu, the last 2 years, she's a Magnum Fellow. The last 2 years, 3 years, she spent recording interviews with journalists that are jailed in Kashmir. And he has a little, small, but extremely important book to produce that we are almost about. I'm looking for money.
Yeah, money.
Yes.
No money.
You do Kickstarter like other publishers do.
We do. We did 16 successful Kickstarter campaign in the past, but I think that today it's different. It's not the same response as before. So it's basically looking for grants, looking for people that open-minded people that would support such a thing. So with this important book that is, for me, it's crucial. It will be printed in India. It will be released in India.
Yes.
Excellent.
Important.
And we can find 15,000.
Okay, we're putting the call
Okay.
there. There must be some pros who want to publish this book who have $1 billion and wouldn't miss 15,000.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
give us a call. Give Svetlana a call and make this book. Thank you so
I'm
much.
here to answer.
Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
New episodes drop every Tuesday on 10fps.net or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also catch back episodes on WLOI.org, as all episodes are recorded and produced at WLOI Loyola Radio in Maryland.